So now we have Joe Hatton, talk by Joe Hatton from the Horniman Museum, talking about the fantastic work they do as an organisation to reduce their sort of environmental footprint.
Hi, I'm Jo Hatton, Keeper of Natural History at the Horniman Museum and Gardens. I've worked at the Horniman for many years, and over the past decade in particular, I've witnessed a significant step change in the Horniman's commitment to sustainability and environmental engagement as we, and I say we, as it's very much been a team effort, embarked on a long and sometimes challenging journey to take us to where we are today. The Horniman Museum has a long-standing commitment to developing sustainable practices and environmental engagement across our programmes and sites. In this presentation, I'll provide a little background to the museum, its collections and sites, the long-standing nature of our work on the environment and sustainability over the past 100+ years, and how we have recently reinforced our commitment to making a step change to help mitigate the climate and biodiversity crisis, doing more to engage audiences and communities with the issues, setting an example to others, and taking more action for the environment on a local and global level, placing sustainability at the heart of what we do. Of course, museums are duty-bound to respond to the various pieces of environmental legislation and best practice, such as the UK Climate Change Act and Biodiversity Duty. However, the appointment of a new CEO, Nick Merriman, in 2018 led to the adoption of a new mission statement and set of values for the institution, which is "The Horniman connects us all with global cultures and the natural environment, encouraging us to shape a positive future for the world we all share." This new emphasis and commitment galvanised the organisation into action and represents a real step change in leadership and collective focus, based around a much more explicit intention to act and take action around climate, ecology and social justice, not just because we have to, but because we want to, and feel that it is our moral and ethical responsibility to do so. We can no longer afford to wait. The unique nature of our collections, buildings, green spaces and access to audiences who broadly trust us and also want to take action presents a unique opportunity to instigate change on a much grander scale. So to start, a little about the Horniman. The Horniman Museum and Gardens is located in Forest Hill in South East London. It first opened to the public in 1890, where collections of art and nature were displayed in the Horniman family residence. In 1901 it changed its name to the Horniman Museum when it reopened in a new purpose-built museum building, the one that remains today. It's named after Frederick Horniman, who inherited and ran his father's tea business, Horniman's Tea. Since that time, the collection and museum itself has expanded enormously to contain around 350,000 objects and specimens of natural history, anthropology and musical instruments, which are used in all kinds of ways. We have lots of green space, 16 acres of beautiful gardens which feature a tropical butterfly house, animal walk, nature trail, conservatory, queue building and pavilion, both featuring living roofs. Our indoor spaces include various gallery spaces, our historical natural history gallery and interactive nature base, our recently redisplayed world gallery and studio art space, music gallery, temporary exhibitions gallery, the aquarium, hands-on base and education centre, shop and cafe. The majority of our collections are stored and accessed at our off-site study collection centre in a former Victorian school building. Pre-pandemic, the site as a whole was receiving over 900,000 visits a year, with a very large proportion of our visitors made up of families, largely visiting, some of them very regularly, from our neighbouring boroughs. Environmental engagement in one form or another has formed part of the Horniman's ethos for a very long time, and here are a few examples. The Horniman Nature Trail, once part of the former Nunhead to Crystal Palace Railway and closed in 1954, was established in 1973 following its disuse and return to a more natural wooded area. The installation of the pioneering living roofed queue building, the Centre for Understanding the Environment, in 1996, that currently houses our library and office spaces, was built to showcase sustainable building practice and principles. International work led by our aquarium team on coral reef restoration and coral breeding has been groundbreaking, and the establishment of a cross-museum working group to produce a long-term sustainability action plan to measure, monitor and report on our progress on an annual basis was established around 2 decades ago. It is clear that the Horniman has long shown its ongoing environmental credentials, becoming a more sustainable organisation using its collections and estate in a variety of ways. More recently, the Horniman embarked on its most ambitious plan yet, challenging itself to make a major step change in its ambition to become a greener, more sustainable museum, actively encouraging others to follow suit. In July 2019, the museum declared a Climate and Ecological Emergency and published its Climate and Ecology Manifesto in January 2020. We also appointed a Climate and Ecology Coordinator to help implement all of this. Our manifesto set out a commitment to accelerating a step change in how visitors engage with nature and the environment across the estate, how we will make practical changes to greening our own organisation, the local environment and people's lives in our communities. In it, we made a number of pledges to mitigate against the ecological and climate emergency, with the aim of shaping a positive future for generations to come. These included, and list them here, reducing the environmental impact of visitors, reducing pollution, including our intention to become greenhouse gas neutral by 2040, reducing waste and increasing efficiency in the storage and display of collections, improving and increasing biodiversity across the site, working in partnership and investing in environmental research, and launching an environmental champions club to help children aged 6 to 10 and their families to adopt more environmentally friendly behaviours. And finally, using our heritage and living collections to engage a greater diversity of visitors with climate and ecological issues. We're submitting a funding bid for our major capital project, Nature and Love, which aims to redisplay our natural history gallery spaces, create a sustainable gardening zone and nature explorers zone, to create a positive movement for environmental change amongst our staff and audiences. We've already reduced our environmental impact in a number of ways, and here's one example. We've replaced 26 products of single-use plastic with vegware products made from plant materials, including straws, coffee cups, sandwich wrappers and takeaway food boxes. This has removed approximately 200,000 single-use items of plastic per year from our footprint. We have also replaced plastic bottled water with cans, taking 24,000 plastic bottles out of circulation and installed 2 drinking fountains on site, provided by One Less and the Mayor of London for people to refill their bottles. Our shop no longer offers single-use plastic bags and stocks a number of fair trade items, as well as working with UK artisans and makers to create unique products inspired by the Horniman's collections. We are also selling more vegetarian, vegan and fair trade food in our cafe. The weekly Horniman market sells products direct from independent and local producers, including seasonal fruit and veg and organic meat. There are also stalls specialising in zero waste, ethical craft and eco-clothing and design. Our gardens are particularly fruitful in this area too, so around 97% of our gardens waste is composted and reused in the gardens. An on-site ride and composter processes food waste from our cafe into mulch for our gardens. We only use peat-free compost. We are recycling around 187,000 litres of water from the aquarium's water filters and reusing it to water the gardens. And we are creating more opportunities for wildlife, so doing things like installing bat boxes, bird houses and book hotels. We have an award-winning bee garden featuring an air pollution absorbing sculpture across the site. We also planted 5,000 bulbs to supply food for early pollinators during late winter and early spring, and mow the grass less often to benefit insects and also reduce our fuel emissions. We are a green flag venue and part of the Green Chain Walk. So doing lots of things in our gardens and outdoor space. So here are examples of what we're planning to do next, from switching to green electricity plans and investigating greener gas options, reducing our water consumption further, introducing green travel plans for staff and visitors, improving biodiversity across the site further, swapping our cleaning products for environmentally considerate ones, on all kinds of other exciting initiatives too. We communicate our sustainability work in a number of ways and have been increasingly proactive in finding more innovative ways to do this through our programmes, exhibitions and displays, as well as through our social media campaigns. For example, our award-winning Beat Plastic Pollution intervention in our aquarium is a particular example, and you can see a little picture of that here. We are being more proactive and inventive in this area. For example, I work with our youth panel on active campaigning and involvement with local organisations such as Climate Action Lewisham, as well as continuing our more conventional forms of public engagement. The Environment Champions Club and the new Nature and Love project will very much form part of our communication strategy too. Challenges and lessons learned. All of this presents us with a range of opportunities and unique challenges. Our buildings are of different ages and status. The historic building is Grade 2 listed. Improving our old and energy consuming infrastructure needs careful planning and resourcing, as making these kinds of improvements are costly and funding limited and competitive. Areas like our cafe and weddings venue hire, with their management outsourced, is less easy to control and often takes longer to implement changes. How we evaluate, monitor and meet targets for reducing our energy consumption or recycling and measuring our impact is also a challenge. Internal communication and staff buy-in, particularly during the pandemic, has its own challenges and makes it more difficult to talk about, embed and motivate people to take action. Many staff have been suffering from climate anxiety or are unsure about how best to communicate the message, especially to young children and families, and need support and training to undertake this with more confidence. Related to this, how we increase diversity and encourage more people to take action, both individual and collective, through active campaigning, for example, is also an area we need to improve upon. We need to do more than preach to the converted, and this is an area we'd very much welcome anyone's advice on. Similarly, we can easily be accused of greenwash, not doing enough in some areas, or being hypocritical in what we do. Effective, honest communication and being transparent about what we can and can't do right now is key here. It's surely better to start somewhere and be accused of being hypocritical and imperfect, rather than doing nothing and waiting to be perfect. Taking leadership and ownership of it goes a long way. We need to remember that most of us do care, particularly about the legacy we are leaving for the next generation to deal with, hence our Nature and Love project and moving things along there. The sheer number of visitors we have means many potentially receptive minds to engage with and embed change in behaviours and action in people's minds and everyday lives, and this means we have to do things differently and be more proactive in our approach. It also helps to have buy-in from the top, and regulatory requirements and incentives from government and councils do help add weight to committing to action too. It's important to involve as many people as possible across the entire organisation, as well as visitors and other stakeholders like trustees, as everyone is in this together. So our main take-home message in stepping up to the environmental challenge would be: get advice, make a plan, get people involved and start taking small steps to start with and work from there. There's lots and lots of information available out there in the sector and beyond, such as the Museums Association guidance, Arts Council, NMDC guidance on museums and sustainability. The Julie's Bicycle Environmental Framework is excellent, and also colleagues and other practitioners to reach out to. So what are you waiting for? Thank you for listening.
Hi Jo, thank you so much for that. It's so impressive what you've done at the Horniman. Congratulations to the team and to the great leadership, like you say. So we've got a couple of questions already. The first is, how do you intend to integrate this work into the Natural History Display Redevelopment? So I don't know if you're able to share any ideas with us on that.
Yeah, we are absolutely definitely planning to integrate lots of green messaging, certainly lots of positive messaging as well. We're all really keen to do that and kind of cross-reference the work that we do both indoors and outdoors, and making sure we highlight all of those stories and narratives within the different areas of the project. So very much thinking about, you know, some of the theming ideas around that would be, you know, that nature needs you and you need nature, and interactions between people and nature as well are going to form a key part of the theming for redisplay, as well as the, you know, the more sort of traditional scientific messaging, I guess, if you want to call it that. Yeah, very much so. And also, you know, the gardens kind of areas, like our you know, the idea of having a sustainable gardening area, and all of those environmental action zones that we will have outside. Also, you know, kind of, you know, mirroring all of those up together as well and connecting them.
It's lovely having that green space because you're able to immediately point people towards actions outside, I suppose. Or...
Yeah, our nature trail is a really brilliant asset as well, actually.
Fantastic.
Because it's more of a wild space. What's
your timescale for that redevelopment? Do you have? I know it's probably.
It's we're just working on putting lottery bids in now, and hopefully we'll, if all goes to plan, we will have new gallery space by sort of 2025, 26, hopefully. And other areas, but we're going to do it in stages probably.
Fantastic.
Pandemic intervened a little bit in putting that back.
Thinking time. Another question is that I'm sure a lot of museum cafes use vegware, but it's amazing to see the numbers of single-use plastic items you've just avoided from being used altogether. Do you display those figures in the cafe? Because it's a really powerful statistic.
We don't at the moment, but there are plans to make a lot more of that messaging visible. I was quite amazed when I looked at those statistics, actually, because it really made me think, like, well, if that's just us and how much we have been able to reduce what we use, then how does that multiply up into everybody, you know, other organisations and into the wider world? So it is really interesting. We've got lots of, you know, we're really thinking now about how we communicate all of what we do, not just on our website and via social media, but visually in our spaces as well. I think one of the issues we have is just we don't have a huge amount of wall space to kind of put panelling and display material up, but we're looking at that.
Yeah, it's amazing to celebrate that work.
It was done really well. I remember visiting the Whitworth in Manchester, and there was lots of interpretation there, highlighting kind of things that they'd done, and I think that is really, really important to communicate that to people and make that more visible, and show that it is possible, you know, that everybody's taking steps.
Definitely. And I was interested in your you said you had like an ecology and climate working group, like how that works, like how many people are involved, and what sort of, is it across the museum roles, or is it sort of operations team kind of thing, and who makes the decisions?
It's been established for quite a lot of years and had different kinds of guises, but yeah, one of the main reasons why we think, you know, why it now works really well is because it incorporates members from across the museum, and it's not hierarchical necessarily either. So we've got, you know, exhibitions team members, we've got collections management, we've got facilities, we've got garden, you know, there's a representation across, you know, Emma Nichols sits on it as well, our natural history deputy keeper. So yeah, we have an aquarium, we have all different people represented on that, and at the moment it's chaired by Nick Merriman as well. So I think it's in the past, maybe we've had a lot more lists of actions, and tried to implement those kind of gradually, but because we've now got this institutional kind of from the top, you know, spirit kind of, you know, really wanting to take action, and also that we did appoint a climate and action coordinator who, you know, her role is specifically about helping to deliver all of this, so that it's not just members of curatorial team or gardens team trying to sort of fit things in their wider range of work that they do. So that's really, really made a difference to stepping up really, and enabled us to do more things more quickly.
Actually fantastic to share that with other museums, because you can see that sort of intention but without the resource behind it necessarily, or like the senior
and we deliberately decided to earmark that fund. You know, we put a pot of funding aside to say, well, this is so important to move this on, that actually we need to do this in this way.
We've had a question from someone whose venue is in the countryside and only 3 buses go there per day, so the only way really to get there is in a car. So in not trying to be hypocritical, how do you tell the public that you're not perfect? Is it on text panels as well?
I think a lot of it, yeah, that's an interesting one. You know, so I think it's a response, you know, it's just being honest and transparent from the beginning, but it's just responding to social media posts or other things like that, where people might potentially say, well, hang on a minute, you're doing this, but actually I've seen this. You know, how do those two things marry up? Isn't that a bit hypocritical? And you know, and our strategy is to just answer those things honestly and clearly with people through communications on our website or directly through our social media channels. Does that answer the question?
And a final question before we go to the break. So the electricity used in museums to help keep the objects safe must be one of the biggest problems to overcome. But the benefits of the museum and in their opinion outweigh this. Do you have any thoughts on this? Does the museum have solar panels, for example?
We would like to incorporate, yeah, I think if we're looking at potentially building a new hopefully sustainable cafe on site, because our current cafe is at capacity really, so we'll be looking into how green we can make that, and solar paneling will be part of it. I think electricity is an interesting one. We're moving to a green tariff, and we've tried to reduce our actually electricity consumption is probably one of the things that we've been able to reduce the most, because we can introduce more things like LED lighting, and like in my office here we've now got sensor lighting and things, so that lights aren't kept on for hours and hours when nobody's in the room, but I have to sit here waving sometimes. But the main thing I've been told that it's not actually electricity, it's gas. And our gas boiler system potentially is going to cost £1.5–2 million to replace, and that's probably our biggest sort of carbon footprint guzzler, really.
Is that something that would find, and is that because it's historic, or is that just generally the gas is the most problematic?
Yeah, it's because all of our heating systems are kind of reliant on that. So it is this balance. Yeah, I think all museums have this kind of balance between maintaining environment and temperature within their buildings and stores and things to meet visitor and collections requirements, and all of this needs careful balancing. And then it just, I thought I might get a question about, why have you set your reducing your carbon emissions target for to become carbon neutral by 2040, which really is a far distance away. But it really is because, we're just unclear about whether we're going to be able to replace our gas, our reliance on gas within, to say that we will be able to do that even within the next 10 years is tricky, actually. And I suspect that will be the case across lots of public sector, with historical buildings in particular.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for sharing with that, especially as you guys are really actively investigating it. So we've got to the break, so we won't be able to hear from the other panellists, but I know everyone shared their email addresses on the slides, and I'm sure people would be happy to continue to answer questions in the chat or over Twitter as well. And so I'd just like to say a huge thank you to all of our panellists today, all of our speakers, and also to everyone who's put questions in the chat. That's also really appreciated.